You're listening to Coupled With, the podcast that helps you take the guesswork out of feeling seen, heard, and valued in your relationship. If you've ever felt stuck in the same arguments, struggled to stay connected, or wondered how to better communicate with your partner, you're in the right place. I'm Dr. Rachel Orlick, a couples therapist and coach, and together, we're going to make relationships make sense. Let's dive in. You swore you wouldn't do it again. You meant it too. After that last blow up, when everything cooled down, when you both exhaled, you had that talk. You went deep, you unpacked it, you even connected. You maybe said things like, let's try to check in before it escalates. We both want the same thing. We just need to slow it down. We've really grown so much. I think we can finally understand what's going on. And you did. You really believed it would be different this time. You felt that warm reconnection, that moment where you looked at each other and thought, okay, we're good. We're getting somewhere here. Then 2 days later, boom, the same argument, the same energy, the same spiral, just in different clothes. This time it wasn't about intimacy. It was about the laundry, or the logistics, or tone of voice, or how you said that. But it ends the same, in disconnection. One of you shuts down, one of you raised your voice, or both of you end up pulling away, silently stewing in your own corners of the house. And now, you're not just hurt, but you're also confused. Because you did the work. You had the insight. You even agreed on what to do next time. So why didn't it stick? Here's the truth. Insight isn't integration. You can understand your cycle. You can name your attachment styles. You can spot your triggers with 20/20 vision. You've read all the books and you've seen all the things and you know exactly what this is. And still, your nervous system will throw you back into that same survival loop. Not because you're broken, not because you're failing, because when it comes to relational conflict, your body moves faster than your brain. And when your system perceives threat, whether it's a raised eyebrow or a subtle pause in your partner's voice, your protective reflex kicks in before your insight ever gets a chance to weigh in. So today, we're unpacking why the same argument keeps happening, even when you've promised that it won't. We'll talk about nervous system hijacks, the myth of knowing better, and why healing your relationship means retraining your body, not just sharpening your insight. Let's get started. Let's begin in a cycle that I see in nearly every high-functioning, emotionally literate couple I work with. I call it the hope collapse cycle. It goes like this. Rupture leads to insight, leads to relief, leads to repetition, and finally collapse. You have a fight, it sucks. You make space for a reflection, you name the patterns that happened, you feel like you finally understand each other. And in that moment, in the afterglow of the insight, you feel hope. You feel reconnected. You say things like, let's keep communicating like this. That felt so much better. Let's do more of that. And then sometime later, maybe 2 days, 2 weeks, a month, you're right back in the fire. You're triggered, you're misattuned, and you're defensive. and you feel like an idiot. Or worse, you feel ashamed. How are we here again? Did nothing we talk about even matter? Are we just doomed to keep doing this over and over again? But here's what most people miss. The rupture didn't happen because you didn't talk enough. It happened because your nervous system wasn't trained for what to do when things heat back up. In the hope collapse cycle, couples over-focus on the conversation after the fight and under-focus on the real-time somatic wiring that has to happen during the fight. You're not broken because you can't apply insight under pressure. Actually, you're normal. Because under stress, the body will always revert to what's familiar, not necessarily what's healthy. And until safety becomes your default response under stress, the cycle won't change. We don't break patterns through willpower. We break them through regulation. So let's talk about one of the most seductive lies in modern relationships. If I understand it, I can stop doing it. And if that were true, this podcast wouldn't exist. Your therapy notes would have solved it, and well-worn copies of Attached and Hold Me Tight would have done the trick. But they probably didn't, because you're here. And that's not because those tools are wrong. It's just because they're incomplete. Here's the thing. Insight is a cognitive event. It lives in the top floor of your brain, the prefrontal cortex. The problem is that conflict doesn't live there. Conflict is actually a basement problem. It lives in your brainstem and in your limbic system, and the parts of you that respond to tone, posture, micro-expressions, and the parts that don't use words, they use sensation. So when you say, I know I shouldn't yell, but I still do, or I understand why I shut down, but I can't stop, that's actually not failure. That's just neurobiology. You can see the pattern and still be pulled under by it. Why? Because awareness without regulation is like spotting a fire and actually having no water. This is where people get really stuck. They think that the problem is a lack of clarity, but the real issue is lack of capacity. Insight can name the wound, but only practice rewires the response. And rewiring doesn't happen in the post-fight analysis. It happens in the pause before you snap. In the moment when your stomach drops and you choose to stay open instead of shutting down. In the slow, messy reps of showing up differently, even when your body is screaming at you to retreat. So no, insight isn't useless, but it's just the map. The nervous system is the driver, and if you're not training the driver, you'll keep ending up in the same ditch, no matter how well you understand the route. So let's stop talking about conflict like it's just a communication issue, because it's not. It's a full body event. Let me show you what I mean. You're in the kitchen, your partner says something, maybe it's sarcastic or just offhanded, and you freeze for a second. Your stomach tenses, your breath catches. Your brain doesn't process the words. Your body processes the meaning, and it says, this doesn't feel safe. That snap reaction, that's not you being dramatic. That's your nervous system doing its job. This is what Dr. Stephen Porges, a neuroscientist, calls neuroception. Your body's built-in radar for safety or threat. It doesn't wait for evidence. It doesn't wait for logic. It makes a split-second call based on tone, posture, proximity, and facial expression. So when your partner looks away mid-conversation, your body doesn't think they must be overwhelmed. It thinks they're abandoning me. When their voice gets loud, your nervous system doesn't register enthusiasm or urgency. It registers danger. And that's why so many people say things like, I go from 0 to 100 in just a second, or I feel hijacked, or I'm watching myself explode and I just can't stop. Because you are. You're responding from a younger, protective part that once learned, probably a long time ago, that this kind of moment isn't safe. And when both partners are being driven by those protective systems, it's chaos, escalation, shutdown. It's two people who love each other behaving like enemies and later wondering how the hell that just happened. Again, this is why conflict can't be solved with scripts alone. It has to be approached as a somatic event first and a cognitive one second. You don't just need better communication tools, you need a better relationship with your own nervous system. Let's make this a little bit more concrete. Because when you're in it, when your chest is tight and your partner's tone feels like a slap across the face, it helps to name what's actually happening. There are two core loops couples get stuck in: the conflict loop and the connection loop. So let's start with the conflict loop. It looks like this. There's a trigger. It leads to protection, and you react, and then it escalates, and then it disconnects, and then there's regret, and then you repeat it. It's a look or a sigh or that sarcastic comment, and you flinch internally, and your nervous system is saying, we've seen this movie before, and we're ready to shift it into gear and gear up for it. So you protect, maybe with silence or criticism, or maybe you just rationalize or correct. Your partner senses that shift, and they respond with their own protection. They get louder or even more passive or go ice cold. And now the loop is running. No one's actually communicating. You're both just managing the threat as fast as your bodies can. And eventually it ends with disconnection, exhaustion, and a lingering sense that you're stuck in emotional Groundhog Day. But the connection loop, that's different. There's a trigger, you notice it, you regulate, you name it, you co-regulate with your partner, and you repair. This one still starts with a trigger, because let's be honest, we can't really eliminate those. But instead of armor going up, someone notices the shift. You pause. You name what's happening. Something inside me just locked up. I want to stay here, but I need a second. You tend to your own nervous system, and then you choose truth over protection. I felt hurt just now. I think I wanted to snap at you, but really I just need reassurance. That shift from control to vulnerability is where repair begins. It's not a skill or a personality trait. It's not a gift. It's a trained pattern. So now you're probably wondering, if insight isn't enough, if communication tools don't stick around during conflict, then what actually works? And here's the unsexy truth. Real change happens in the pause, the tiny sliver of space between a stimulus and its response. It doesn't look like a breakthrough conversation. It looks like this. You feel that familiar snap in your chest. You know the one. It leads to sarcasm or shutting down. But this time, you catch it just for a second. You pause. You don't launch into your usual reaction. You exhale and say something like, I'm starting to go to that place again. Can we slow this down? That's the moment that it begins. So let me walk you through a 3-part framework I use with clients all the time to actually break the pattern. So 1 is the pattern interrupt. The old cycle has momentum. You can't stop what you don't see. So you need to notice the first physiological cue. A clenched jaw, shallow breath, a tight stomach, and use that as your internal fire alarm. This is your cue to pause the narrative and get present in your body. Then 2 is the nervous system awareness. You're going to ask yourself, what is happening in my body right now? Not what do I think it means, or how do I win at this point? Or what is my partner trying to do? You're just tracking the sensation. Stay with it. This step alone can drop your reactivity by around 50%. Because when you're in awareness, you're not automatic. And so then the final part is emotional ownership. Now that you're grounded, you're naming the real thing. It's not, you never listen, but I felt ignored, and that made me want to lash out. But what I really need is to feel like I mattered. Vulnerability creates safety, and safety is what ends the loop. It's not logic. This is how real change happens, in these small, imperfect, and deeply human moments where you choose connection over protection, even when it costs you your pride. So let's land it like this. If you're stuck in the same argument on repeat, if you keep thinking, we should know better by now, but that cycle is still pulling you under, it's not because you're broken, and it's not because your partner isn't trying, and it's not because you haven't read the right book or learned the right tool yet. It's because you're expecting your body to act regulated when it's actually never been taught how to do that before. You're asking your nervous system to do something it hasn't done any reps for yet. And the truth is, healing doesn't happen in hindsight. It happens in these tiny rupture and repair moments where you choose to stay, speak softly, or step away to regulate instead of spiraling. You don't need to be perfect to break this pattern. You just need to start catching it one step earlier than you did last time. That's it. 1 notch more awareness, 1 second more space before you react, and 1 sentence more vulnerable than you're used to. And every time you do that, you're not just managing conflict. You're actually retraining your nervous system to believe that love can be safe. That's what creates change that sticks. Not another deep talk, not more analysis, but embodied trust built moment by moment. In the messy middle, when things get hard and you choose connection anyway. That's what rewires everything. If you've been nodding along during this episode thinking, this is exactly what happens in my relationship, but I don't know how to stop it, I made something for you. It's a free 7-day email course called Break the Cycle. Each day I'll walk you through simple steps to stop the same fight from repeating and start rebuilding real connection without shutting down, walking on eggshells, or trying to do it all perfectly. You can sign up at my website. I'll link it in the show notes. It's totally free. This isn't just about communication. It's about breaking patterns that are breaking you. That's it for today's episode of Coupled With. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to hit subscribe so you never miss what's next. And if you found it helpful, please share it with a friend or leave a quick rating and review. It really helps more than you know. And if you're curious about how we might work together or want more resources to strengthen your relationship, head over to my website, www.drrachelorlick.com. You'll find free tools, podcast extras, and ways to go deeper. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.